Black folk in general drive the things that are driving culture and what becomes popular in 6 months, 18 months down the road. So it's really a great place for brands to understand how they can innovate and come up with new products and new ways to talk to their audiences. And audiences, in that oftentimes it creates an opportunity to to introduce your brands to new people.
First of all, I want to thank all of you for being here, especially after wine tasting. Either you're buzzed or you're drunk, and either way, we just thank you for being here. It's going to be a great conversation. If someone would please make sure that we have hours available after this panel, we'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you. My name is Shaunice Hawkins, and I'm the board advisor for Impact in the area of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I am honored to be here with you and to be joined by such an auspicious panel. You can't bring out these powerful women without, of course, having them come out to Beyonce. Hello, I mean, everybody knows this. And there's actually less than 6 degrees of separation between these panelists and Beyonce, but you'll have to talk to us afterwards to find out what that is. You're welcome. So next to me is Orchid, and she is with Blavity. I'm not going to introduce all of them in their formal settings because we can all read, and you can Google them and then link in and, then tweet us and then Instagram us and all that other stuff. But I am going to introduce them to you by way of the questions that I ask and their responses, and you'll get to know them throughout this conversation. The other thing is, and I promise I'm going to get to this, but I wanted to sort of give this preface. You're going to talk to Orchid from Blavity. You're going to talk to Brittany from the Influencer League, and you're going to talk to Shreya from MSL Group. And we're going to have an amazing conversation. But before that, I wanted to do a little level setting so that you understand where this conversation is going to go. Mike, thank you very much for introducing us. And you heard him talk about how we're having this conversation. And most people, when they hear about diversity, equity, and inclusion, they hear about it from an HR standpoint, right? Who are we hiring? Where are we getting our talent? Who are we retaining? What's the turnover? And if none of those things mean anything to you, don't worry, this conversation is not going to be had today. But we are going to be talking about it from your perspectives, right? We're going to talk about it from your strategy perspective, how it relates to you either as a content creator or a publisher, but also from an agency side, whether you're public relations or marketing, but then also somewhere in between. So if you're willing to ride with me and rock with them, I hope that you'll be paying attention. And oh, by the way, I moonlight as a professor, so I'm expecting notes. We will check homework afterwards. Okay, so ladies, are you ready?
We're ready. Yeah.
Okay, are we going to do Queen Bey proud?
Oh, absolutely. We'll do our best.
Absolutely.
Slay. That's our,
absolutely. We're going to slay. We're going to slay. Okay, so Orchid, I wanted to talk to you first because, first of all, thank you very much for joining us today. And she's one of our newest partners here at Impact. So let's give her a round of applause. Welcome.
Thank you.
So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about sort of your world and your experience as this sort of content publisher and creator. Blavity, if none of you know what Blavity is, you can take out your phones and look. I won't give you points off. But Blavity is this amazing content creator and publisher, and they sort of had their fingers on the pulse of Black culture here in the US and abroad. And the work that they do, I could never do it justice, but I wanted to say, having this niche and having sort of this path forward into this culture, everyone knows who you are. Everyone who knows the brand. But tell us your experience in this world and in this space, and tell us how it feels to be in this sort of niche area, and how easy or how difficult has it been for you to sort of make these connections with brands and agencies?
Absolutely. First, I want to say thank you to Impact and Shaunice for having me. I'm so excited to be here and to be a partner with Impact. So as Shaunice alluded to, Blavity is a Black media company. We have about 80 digital brands on our platform, and then we represent another 50 Black media publishers who are aligned with the Blavity voice and audience and how we go to market. And we talk to 250 million people in the US every month. So we are a huge platform. We are actually the largest Black media platform in the United States as defined by ComScore, so we're huge. And so oftentimes when we're going to market and we're talking to our brands and advertisers, we spend a lot of time educating them about our space and helping them understand why it's important to work with a company like us, and how we're able to drive innovation, audience, and really give their brands credibility in their space. Innovation from the perspective, because we're such a niche market, our niche brand, we're much more willing to try interesting and compelling tests and drive interesting and compelling creative that some of our counterparts would not do. And because Black folk in general drive the things that are driving culture and what becomes popular in 6 months, 18 months down the road. So it's really a great place for brands to understand how they can innovate and come up with new products and new ways to talk to their audiences. And audiences, in that oftentimes it creates an opportunity to introduce your brands to new people and new places and new things through really authentic content, whether that content is content that we create or if it's content that we help the brands and agencies to create. So that's kind of the depth and breadth.
Okay, and I love your sort of the work that you're doing, so I'll try to stop fangirling. But this sort of, what you're describing to me is almost this, in this particular industry, a sort of a communication and connection gap, right? Because it doesn't just happen with the Black culture and Black content creators, right? It does happen, I think of, maybe because I'm a proud member of AARP.
Yes.
Right?
As am I.
Let me tell you, that's a different story. So I think about sort of the age market, right? And I think about the intersectionality. And for those of you in the room who don't know the word intersectionality, it's really about where your identities intersect. So presenting to you, I am a woman, but I identify as a woman, but I am also at the intersection of a certain age, a certain ethnicity, or multiple ethnicities, because I'm multiracial, but very proud to be Black. And also, I'm at the intersections of different aspects of either inherited diversity, meaning representation, or acquired. So that means I was born a certain way, and so I have certain things that were intrinsic to me as a person that I was born to be, or things that I've acquired, like it could be my education or my experience. So for those of you in the room who don't know that, so when you hear me say the word intersectionality, that's what that means. I'm at the intersections of like everything. I'm a brand's dream. But so I called on AARP for an example. I have no affiliation with them except for being a card-carrying member. Thank you for the discounts. But how does that, any niche, whether it's age or stage or et cetera, I'm hearing that there's like this connection and communication gap between the work that all of you are doing, and you have these brilliant strategies and you're owning your space, but brands are still, and agencies are still having trouble reaching outside of Black History Month, or it's June, Pride Month, or,
Yeah, well, I think it's because brands only understand us from the Juneteenth perspective or only through Black history.
Right.
But we're active 10 other months outside of the year, and we have interesting, compelling things that we are doing. And so really when brands come to work with us, we really need to focus on allowing us to educate you on how to speak to our audience. Oftentimes brands come to us with a preconceived idea about how they should come to us, what they should say, and how they should deliver the message. And what that often comes out as pandering in some ways. And so when you work with a niche company like us, Blavity, or any other niche brand, it's important to allow us to educate you on how to speak to our audience and how to deliver content to us.
And I'm so glad that you talk about education because, Brittany, you see the feathers, right? I'm not saying fabulous, but
Thank you.
But Brittany, you have created this awesome organization. It's called the Influencer League, and it's basically like the Justice League of influencers. So if you're like a comic person like I am, like they meet somewhere and they all like do their magic and they league together. No, I'm just kidding. No, but seriously, I joke, but it is an amazing institution. So please tell us like what the Influencer League is, what it does, what catalyzed you to sort of say, this is a need, and how do we know more about this? Like, tell us everything.
Okay. I'm fine with being in Justice League as long as I get to be Batman.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Let's just get that out there. But yeah, the Influencer League, I found it in 2019 while I was working for an agency and I was running full-scale influencer marketing campaigns. And while I was running these campaigns, I realized how much power we had on the brand side, and especially as even just an influencer coordinator, to make decisions on who we wanted to put on the campaigns. We knew the budgets, we were managing them, of course we had, our clients as, calling the shots, letting us know how much we had to work with and the parameters of the creators they wanted to work with. And we worked within that. But at the end of the day, it's who we found that we felt would be the right fit with the budget and all things considered. And I noticed when I first got there and I inherited some of these campaigns that I would say about 99% of the influencers on the campaign were white. There was no diversity. You'd have the token Black, token Asian, token Hispanic creator, and it was startling because I was an aspiring, growing content creator myself. And I had my background in social media and advertising, and I knew that I loved teaching people about how to become content creators. And so I took it upon myself and hope no one called me out on it. But as I started sending rosters over to my clients with influencer recommendations, I told myself there has to be at least 50% Black women. There has to be at least this percentage of Asian women, of Hispanic. Like, I want to make this incredibly diverse. Like, sometimes there might only be like 2 white women on it and everybody else is, Black or a woman of color, or just a creator of color. And so no one ever said anything, so I just kept doing it. And then one day I was talking with one of my very first influencer clients, and I was like, I'm gonna put this tweet out and ask people on Twitter. I had like 2,000 followers at the time, and so I thought I was just tweeting in the void. And I said, if you're a Black or brown content creator and you're looking for brand deals or you're looking for help on how to secure them, let me know. And it blew up. Like, this tweet went so viral. I had thousands of responses. My DMs were blowing up. And I knew it was at that moment in time that not just in the US, but worldwide, there were Black creators who had such a lack of educational knowledge, not just on the creator side, but on the brand side and how we do things, that was my opportunity and my lane to come in and say, I can speak from the content creator side and I can speak from the brand and agency side, which really hadn't been done before. And so that's how the Influencer League was birthed, and it has just grown so far and so vast. And so that's kind of what really catalyzed me to create it.
That is amazing. Yes, I peeped it a little bit, and I'm like, there's a wait list. I'm like, I don't want to wait. I know the founder. You get me on this list.
Yes.
Don't make me see the manager.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is that I'm also juggling being a content creator myself, being a soon-to-be mother of 3, working on the agency side and freelancing as well. So just like juggling a lot of things and still building up this team as a young Black founder. Sure. And so we're at this point now where we're kind of going towards this biannual schedule. So we kind of like at a university where we'll have our spring enrollment and our fall enrollment. So I think that's the other thing that kind of pushes creators to want to join at a certain time, because like, I need to join now because this could change my life in 30 days. This could change my life in 6 months. So I need to join now next time they open. And we've seen those results as well. I remember back in 2021, before I had my son Maddox, I did a 1-hour training on brand deals. And I always get nervous asking for reviews because it's like, oh, people hated it. But I ask anyways. I'm like, oh, if I get some constructive criticism, it's fine. But usually I never do. But point is, after this 1-hour training, I asked for, feedback on what we could do better. And one influencer, she said that just this 1-hour class, a week later, she was able to secure $6,000 more on a brand deal than she would have been able to before this class. And so it's just showing that just the access to education, first and foremost for creators, is so incredibly important.
So I'm going to springboard from this, and then I want to talk to Shreya, because you both have partnered together in some interesting research. And as a fellow nerd, you're talking my language.
Yes.
Okay, but Brittany, before I pivot to the research, what benefit? Like, we have a lot of folks in here, right? And so I'm hearing from you about what you do for influencers and but what benefit is it for these folks out here? Not that you're not in the room. But what benefit is it for all of our guests here to even partner with organizations and content creators like Blavity, like your clientele?
Yeah, just like Orchid said, Black creators first and foremost drive trends on every single. On top of those trends that we drive, the buying power of just Black Americans in general. And Shreya knows this because it's in the research of just how impactful that buying power is. So at every way you turn, partnering with Black and brown creators it just makes sense. I mean, I can't put it any more simple than that. It just makes sense. But also just showing that how important diversity truly is, and being able to consume content from different perspectives, just like playing off what Orchid said, like Black people, brown people are not a monolith. So, you may have someone like me who's from South Mississippi, grew up a certain way, and my content and the way that I speak is going to look different than, a Black woman the same age who grew up in New York or in LA. Right. And so you get that with all the different types of creators across the world and their different niches, and you really get to have a full picture of, how it could best benefit even just like your product or your brand or your service.
Sure. And I want to also point out, because you brought up a good point, no intersection is a monolith, right? You can't speak to all women the same way. You can't speak to people over 50 all the same way, even though, I've tried to talk to my grandparents and it really is the same. You can't speak to people who are neurodiverse the same way, people who have disabilities the same way. So when you start speaking to them into these particular niches, we call them niches, right? Or these particular groups, in such a monolithic or sort of catch-all, one-size-fits-all way, you really devalue who they are and you disrespect their identity, right? And so in order to, the reason why I think brands miss the mark is because they don't see the value that each of these groups bring. So Orchid has been kind enough to share with us about the communication and the connection gap in the industry. And Brittany has been kind enough to talk a little bit about the access and opportunity gap. But I'm going to talk to Shreya because she's going to give us some insight around the value and the equity gap, right? And I think that that's important because Brittany, as I shared with you, I hinted before, Brittany and Shreya work together. But Shreya, you actually have done this research and you've done a deep dive. And for those of you who don't know what the MSL group is, the MSL group is sort of this consortium of, it's not sort of, it is a consortium of PR firms and marketing firms. And
yeah, we're a PR firm, we're global, and we're part of the Publicis group.
Right.
So we're the PR arm for Publicis.
Yes. And so you've done this research, and I've seen the research, and like, It's both astounding, but it's also so interesting. I need you to just,
Get it all out.
please, just.
Are you guys ready? I'm very bright and pink, but I might get dark for a quick second. It's really interesting to hear my peers talk about sort of, sitting on the other side of the picket fence, doing the work. And I think, we talked about agencies and brands missing the mark at times. And I think what's interesting, what I wrote down, I'm always taking notes, so don't mind me. I'm a paper pen gal, a little bit old school. But these nuances that are so important to get to, the influencers help us fill those gaps, right? Because this is a diverse group of folks just out there. So I just wanted to make a point of that. I think it's so important to just keep in mind. I think that as I start to get into the research, it's interesting to sort of sit on the agency side and watch kind of the evolution of, perhaps there are some others here from the agency side, from the brand side. We are constantly observing our peers, we're observing the industry, we're observing culture, and then we know something's happening, and we just keep moving, and then something really bad has to happen for us to sit right up and actually start to do some things a little differently.
Yeah.
And so when I think about what prompted us to do something as an industry, and definitely as MSL, I'll start with 4 severe, brutal, but necessary words. Murder of George Floyd. And I just want to let that sink in for a second, because the outcry that we all saw, some witnessed, some experienced, and the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement, it really brought this energy to an incredibly difficult but important topic of racial injustice, right? We all felt very uncomfortable very quickly. And we also noticed how people were sort of responding to that in a variety of ways that got us on certain sides of the conversation. But I think as a result of that, we started to see, as we've talked about this so many times, that diverse creators started calling brands out, right? Especially Black creators, for so many things. Of course, pay parity was a huge issue, lack of representation. Remember the black box?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
No action.
No action.
Just a black square.
Absolutely.
And so, imagine anybody doing that today, right? So, we've accelerated quite a bit. But I think what's really interesting is when that started to happen, we saw a deep desire in the industry for people wanting to genuinely do something different. And I think for us at MSL, and as Brittany knows, we're supposed to be leaders in influence and influencer marketing. We have this amazing platform with over 23 million influencers globally. And the amount of restlessness and discomfort that we felt was daunting. And so we needed to be the catalyst for change. Okay, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's over 16.4 billion today and growing. We all know that. That's why we're all here in this room. And you start to think about how that industry is operating. It's still the Wild West. Mm-hmm. There's no employee representation, which is why, Brittany, thank you for the work that you're doing, and you as well, Orchid, right? There's no representation. There's no regulation. There's an opaque compensation system. And what was mind-blowing for us, and to me as a strategist and a research geek, is there was no data. So how the heck do you chart a path and look for KPIs and think about what success looks like if you're not armed with information?
Right.
You can't quantify it. And it was mind-blowing to see nobody had done the work. I think there was one organization in the UK that had done something, but it wasn't big enough. And, and so in August 2020, so Floyd, April, August 2020, we started to make some commitments, some tangible commitments. We started to sort of think about just looking at the mirror. And we started to see, all right, how do we track diversity data? How do we up-level discovery of BIPOC creators? And then, how do we partner with folks like Brittany to actually study the problem? And so we did that. So for several months, we studied the problem. We surveyed and interviewed a little over 400 influencers, like across the tiers, from micro to macro and sort of everywhere in between. And what we found, as you pointed out, was staggering. The pay gap between BIPOC creators and white creators was 29%. 29. It widens for black creators versus white, 35%. And I have the numbers here. If you juxtapose those numbers with education, 8%, entertainment, 16%, national average, 25%. Let that sink in for a second. 35%. And why is this happening? Because BIPOC creators, and BIPOC workers in general, but BIPOC creators, since we're talking about influencers, are languishing and stuck in lower tiers. They cannot grow their following above 50,000. And I'll get to that in just a second. But I just wanted to kind of pause there. Like that's
No, please
Keep
continue
going.
that piece because that was my next question is sort of to expand on that.
Yeah.
And then I want to hear from both Brittany and Orchid, what is that, how does that, I believe in sort of somatic response, and I would love to hear from them, how do they personally feel in that space, but then how do they feel from, how do you both feel from your organizational representation, and what does that mean for you respectively?
Yeah.
So please lean into the pay inequity, is sort of why it exists and how it exists and some of those other pieces.
Yeah, I think, we definitely had like a holy crap moment when you look at those numbers, right? You kind of knew, but now you have the data. Once we got over the holy crap moment, I think we did feel energized because now there was no arguing. We could start to have a conversation. The first step to change is conversation, right? So we were able to have conversations. God knows how many conversations, Brittany, you and I had with folks. And I think that's really important. So, it's interesting if you Google the study, it's called Time to Face the Influencer Pay Gap. And I think for us, it was moving beyond facing, but actually collectively working together to closing this gap.
And I agree. There was a lot of changes that I noticed after the study released, just from a content creator, but also through the Influencer League and just helping other creators manage and negotiate their brand deals. Because once that stat was out, it was kind of our ammo to say, hey, there's a pay gap. Now you can expect Black and POC creators to charge more so that we can close this pay gap. And it started becoming more accepted. On the brand side, I started noticing that with the right education, Black creators and brown creators were starting to charge more appropriate rates and closer, and sometimes even higher, because how do you close the pay gap? So that study really did change quite a bit for us, and then just for me personally, being able to do the work through the Influencer League, and we haven't mentioned it yet, but through the partnership between MSL and the Influencer League, we were able to educate, at this point now, 2,000 BIPOC creators in the United States over the age of 18, and help them with getting closer to closing the pay gap, raising their rates, and even as simple as like getting them over that 50K follower hump. And if they can't get over that hump, I'm gonna charge appropriately if I have 20,000 followers, if I have 10,000, because now I know how to read my contracts. Now I know how to effectively negotiate. Now I know how to communicate with people on the brand and agency side.
And I think it's such an important point. What Brittany is sort of sharing with us all is if you start to think about what is the reason behind this inequity that exists, right? So there's a few things that the research pointed out. One was lack of pay transparency. I think we actually literally heard that from you, but also a lot of the interviews that we did, lack of pay transparency. It is literally the Wild West. So that was a huge issue. Lack of negotiation skills. And I know that your courses, do a lot of work there as well. Race is a factor, and that was heartbreaking. People actually there's the feeling. It's like this is true, but you can't quantify it. Race was stated as a factor for like lowballing offers, right? The one that broke my heart a lot was BIPOC creators who we spoke to said that if I post on social justice issues, I get reprimanded. I am not getting the deals that I want because I know that's being used against me. The heartbreaking part wasn't that. The heartbreaking part was when we were speaking to white creators, they said, we are getting accolades and rewards for posting about racial justice issues.
No, Orchid, yeah.
No, I was just going to say that's something that we experience often at Blavity. It's because when we work with our media partners, they undervalue the contribution that we make to the audience and how we're able to authentically talk to our audiences in a way that resonates between us and the advertiser. And so because they undervalue our audience, they don't understand how to speak to our audience, it's easier for them to go talk to someone who looks like them. And because our creators don't fit into the box of how they have defined, they think, oh, we don't want to work with you because you don't look like what I decided who uses my product, when actually it is a person who looks like me in this intersection. So it's totally about that, yeah.
And if I may, just to contextualize, we've used the word BIPOC. So for the audience, BIPOC is an acronym that stands for Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And people of color include East Asian, Southeast Asian, and any other sort of subcategory within that. So I wanted to give that clarification there. And I think the other thing, I know, I'm always the professor. Hey, I could have been a cabaret singer. I chose academia. I think the other point that you raise, Orchid, is around something called affinity bias, right? And so it is it's natural to have affinity bias, right? It's the reason why I pick all the blue M&Ms out of the M&M packet. It's not that I don't love all of the M&Ms equally.
For me, it's the pink starburst.
See, it's just we know what we like, right? However, we have to be consciously aware, right? This conversation really is about intention, right? Being mindful. And so we can be mindful with our accolades, and we can be mindful to center ourselves. We need to be mindful around inclusion, right? And so not just wait until June for, I have a friend, he calls me Just February because I'm Black, and I call him Just June because he's gay. It's like, that's how they distill us, right? Culturally, they distill us to our months. And I'm like, well, hey, I get 2 months. Actually, I get 3 because I'm also Native American. So I get like November and February, and I get March because I'm a woman. And then if AARP comes up with a month, I'm just like winning. I'm winning. But it's important to understand, right? We're talking about their experiences, their lived experiences. But that does happen in other, the Latina or the Latino, Hispanic culture. That also happens because their intersection is not just cultural and ethnic, it's also colorism, right? And there are so many layers, and you really can't talk to these audiences as if you can it's like you couldn't walk into my house and tell me how to cook. You can tell me what you like, but you really can't tell me how to cook. And so, it's like you're walking into our communities and telling us how we should be, right? And just like we wouldn't tell you how to be, you really can't tell our communities how to be or presume that you know how we operate, regardless as to whatever our intersection is. So please, I'm going to give I have like 7 minutes and 38, 37, 36 seconds left. I want to give more points, and then I want to get one more point from all of you on this particular topic, but I have one really good question for this audience that I need them, question for you that this audience needs to hear.
I do want to make one point, we are talking about these sort of various reasons for, inequity, and we talked about a few. But I think what's really important to really acknowledge and digest and understand is these are all symptoms to a much larger problem. Yeah. And so when we went in to unpack insights around the absence of pay parity, we got the insights. But when we walked out of it and had this bird's eye view, what we realized is we found a much larger story of systemic inequity. And what does that mean? It means that BIPOC creators are not starting from the same place as white creators. Yeah. They don't have access to the same resources, the same networks, the same relationships, the same finances. You name it, they don't have it. And that is a huge, huge issue. And I just wanted to make sure that the room heard that, because I think that is a really, critical point for us to keep in mind.
Thank you.
For sure.
Orchid, do you want to add to anything that Shreya said before we?
No, I echo I agree with everything that you said, because we see it in when we're doing media buys where we have to fight for more money or fight for larger budgets, because there's this conversation that our audience is not as broad, there's not enough reach, but all of those things are not true. So absolutely. Yeah.
And I actually recently, to your point, asked a question to my students, if you had more money, just cash money, what would you do with it? And the answers from these, BIPOC creators was, I would hire a lawyer, to help me review my contracts. I would make sure I have a manager and an agent. Those are two different jobs for creators. An accountant, someone to help me do my taxes and manage your finances, because, being a full-time content creator, tax time looks a lot different than when you have a 9 to 5, especially, once you get over that like 6-figure hump. It's a completely different ballgame. They would have access to, like assistants and better photography to level up their content. There's so many things that they would do if they just had access to more funds, and it really starts there. But my second point was going to be that although we work directly with creators, like that's our angle in, being on the brand and agency side and talking about just like how we, advocate for creators, or how I advocate for creators, is so intrinsic to me as a Black woman. The rest of my team, it's not, and that has been a hard battle to fight as well. Because being in these spaces, being one of the only Black people, if not the only Black person on this influencer team, and the rest of the team kind of just not even thinking, oh, I have to make this campaign diverse. It's not a thought for me, because I'm a Black woman. Like, of course I'm going to put you on it. Like, I follow you. I know your content. I see how you write your captions, and I can understand them. Whereas, my white coworkers, they don't think the same. So they're not thinking of all the inequity there too. So it's not just a creator issue. It's on the agency and brand side as well, to make their teams incredibly diverse as well. So.
Okay, so I need like another 3 to 5 hours on this. No, I'm just kidding. Like, this is, so I'm hearing part 2 next year. Is that what I'm hearing? Okay. Okay, no, but seriously, we're about to wrap up the discussion, and I have a question for you all. This is a good one. What is the one thing that you dare challenge or charge the folks in this room and the industry at large, right, to action, not talk, right, not converse, not chat with friends, not post on socials, but what do you charge, dare, or challenge this industry to action between now and IPX 2024 when we come back for the follow-up? I'm just saying.
It's gonna happen.
They're gonna kill me, by the way.
I'll go first, because my answer's really quick, I promise. I challenge you all, especially on the brand and agency side, working with creators, to step outside of your comfort zone. As you mentioned, there's a lot of intersections. You can step outside of your comfort zone and work with creators that you wouldn't normally work with, because they will surprise you. They will. As long as they're hitting your message, they have good brand presence, great content, which you can find. Step outside of your comfort zone. If you're using tools to find creators, go to Instagram, go to Twitter, look through hashtags, do more social listening, and really tune into the conversations that diverse creators are having. And I guarantee you're gonna find creators who are using your products and using your services that you never considered. Give them a chance.
Yeah, I would say that, and this is gonna sound very simple, but I would say don't let diversity just be something you do Monday through Friday. It really has to permeate through everything that you do. It has to be the friends that you have, the social media that you read, the articles that you consume, because it has to really be who you are. And I'm assuming that everybody in this room, because we're coming in after the wine tasting, really wants to figure out what it is. What do I have to do to break down diversity? And it is literally just do it outside of your 9 to 5. It has to be, everything that you do has to be around diversity.
You actually bring up a good point, and Shreya, I promise I'm gonna give you the last word, but here's a fun fact. Fun fact, and this is why my daughter calls me Hyperlink. Did you know that one and 10 white folks in the United States has friends of color. Not knows people, but friends. Like you look in your social media, not just LinkedIn, but like Facebook, if anybody's still on Facebook. You know, like friends, like people, they like, hey girl, what's going on? Or hey dude, what's like friends. 1 in 10. Now I'm the product of 2 white grandfathers, so they've gotten their out the way. But no, seriously, like 1 in 10. So look at your friend group, right? Look at your folks and figure out, you know, I'm not saying that we're the first ones in your group if you don't have them.
Yeah, I could be your friend if you want.
Hey. Shreya.
We're actively participating in friendship. We're here. I'll give you myself. I think, we're unstoppable.
We're unstoppable.
You should have seen us in the green room. I think that it doesn't matter who you are and where you sit in the organization. Just zone in and think about what making space means for you. Pick the one thing and just relentlessly commit to it. Just commit to it, one thing. That's all I'll say.
Just one thing. I love that. Oh,
Love it.
right?
Way
3
to
to 4
finish off.
maybe 3 to 4, maybe 5 more hours. Really, right? Okay. Thank you all. First of all, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. For being here and for lending your time and expertise. And before we leave, because this is the last panel, I have to do something that they're going to kill me because I'm past time. Thank you to all the people behind the scenes, all the people in the pink shirts, all the people in the Black Impact shirts. Thank you. To the organizers. Thank you. From the persons who mic'd us, to the camera people, to the sound engineers, thank you. So thank you to the servers, thank you to all of the people behind the scenes, because a lot of them look like us. And those that don't look like us, you're still our people. But I want to say thank you, because without all of your work and helping us, you're essential. So without all of your work, we can't get our message out. We can't do what we do. So I'm personally saying thank you to all of you. And of course, thank you to Impact for this opportunity. And thanks to all of you for being in the audience and even wanting to hear what we have to say. We'll be on the side signing autographs for you.
And giving you our cell phone numbers.
So thank you very much. Appreciate it.